Welcome back to the Six Figure Speaker Summit. Our next speaker, Dr. Andre Walton, is an inventor and successful entrepreneur, taking his inventions from ideas to global leaders in their field. He is now a business coach with a focus on creativity and innovation, and his social psychology PhD is focused on creativity, as is his work as the visiting professor of creativity and entrepreneurship at the Newport Business School. Please welcome Dr. Andre Walton.
Thank you, Frank. I would be shocked if at some point, perhaps when you're walking the dog or taking a shower and your brain was wondering what to do for 30 seconds while its case is being cleaned, if you hadn't thought, how did we get here? How did we get to the point where I can ask some mythical muse named Alexa to turn on the sprinklers, add something to my shopping list, or even unlock the front door for the pizza guy, but not actually when I'm in the shower? Apologies to any fundamentalists, but I think Charles Darwin did a pretty good job of describing how we got from the primordial ooze to where we are now. But having opposable thumbs does not explain the internet, the iPhone, or the jet engine. From the wheel and the bow and arrow to these amazing inventions that surround us, creativity is the root of our social evolution. And it has always been with us as a species and individually. I've spent a lot of time with my three gorgeous granddaughters since they were born. Even before we could communicate in any kind of language that I could understand, every day they would show me some new thing they had discovered and compare it to knowledge they already had in an attempt to make sense of their world. Sometimes their conclusions were hilarious, sometimes a little difficult to understand, but they were all the result of individual creativity. Observe, think, experiment. Crawling and toddling increased their radius of exploration and their hunger for discovery. And then when language was added to the mix, their evolutionary journey went on steroids. Mummy, why does Daddy have to put gas in the car? Daddy, why is it hotter in the car than outside? Mummy, why do dogs have tails? And so on. By the time they started school, they'd made sense of their physical world. They knew to keep their fingers away from the edge of the car door when it's being slammed shut. A hearty tug on the dog's tail can have negative consequences, as can touching the stovetop, even though it's just been turned off. From an evolutionary perspective, they had learned to maximize their chances of survival. However, that's the physical world. When they're plunged into the new community called school, they abruptly change from being physicists to being social psychologists. Their world has changed and they have to change with it. It's called learning to fit in. New rules and social norms were learned from the reactions of others to their actions and behaviors. They learned to anticipate reactions of others to their proposed actions. Unlike the written rules, they began to discover the boundaries between acceptable and unacceptable behavior. In other words, social norms. The unwritten rules that we all need to master in order to fit in and satisfy our powerful and fundamental need for connectedness with others. These norms change from group to group. As adults, we know that language and actions we might use with our friends at the place of worship or colleagues at work may not be the same as with our buddies at the ball game, and that the norms in the US may differ from those in other parts of the world. My childhood was very different than that of my granddaughters. My dad, whom I didn't know was my dad until I was 11, was 60 when I was born. He was becoming a world-renowned artist, and my highly creative mother was 25. They thought nothing of this age discrepancy. Why would they? They had their art in common. They treated social norms as optional, a trait often shared by highly creative people. When I was 7, two gentlemen in ill-fitting suits arrived at the boarding school where my mother worked and we both lived, and bundled me into her arms to say goodbye, and bundled her into a shiny black car. I was told that they were taking her to look after my grandmother. Even at that age, I knew that the police were not taxi drivers. No, my mother was being institutionalized. As a single mom with only a minimum need to fit in, she and I were paying the price of ostracization by the good denizens of rural England in the 1950s with their Victorian attitudes. The next year or so was a mixture of loneliness and confusion that bred self-reliance and independence. I felt no need to apportion blame for this transition in my life, but if blame were appropriate, it should not fall on my mother or her creativity, but on society's intolerance and stigmatization of those who don't fit the mold. This can include many other groups, by the way, such as the deaf and the blind. There's a lot of work involved in the process of socialization, particularly for those at the edges of the bell curve, and it can keep us well occupied beyond our teenage years and maybe for the rest of our lives. The extent to which we master social norms can play a major role in dictating success in later life. To be clear, social norms are voluntary boundaries that we impose on our thoughts and actions. This is important regarding preserving our creativity. Starting school and learning to fit in can be pleasurable because of our innate, powerful drive to be connected to others, which is a vital process when it comes to survival of our species. The psychologist Abraham Maslow considered this need to be second only to food and water. To be deprived of others' company by solitary confinement, for instance, is a cruel punishment, and only the strongest can survive it unscathed for any long period of time. However, we have another powerful drive, also important in perpetuating the species, to be and to seem to be individual, with a unique set of characteristics, opinions, likes and dislikes. To some extent, these two drives oppose each other. On the one hand, being a member of a group requires that we think and act within the boundaries of the group's norms, and it is our similarities with others that are salient. On the other hand, when we're focused on our individuality, it is our differences from others that motivate us. So we have uniqueness and groupiness opposing each other. And these drives are in tension. Research by myself and others shows that anything attracting to one side of this tension reduces the effect of the other side. In other words, an influence that causes us to become more attached to a group will tend to reduce our motivation to demonstrate uniqueness. This, of course, includes being creative. That makes sense, doesn't it? Since creativity requires that we think about things differently from others and differently from what's gone before, correct? Otherwise, we follow the same path and produce the same result. And that is the definition of insanity, I think, isn't it? So to maximize our creativity, we need to give priority to our individuality and reduce our dependence on our group connectedness, at least when we are being creative. Now, creativity is not a special skill. It's a way of thinking. And you can see this in highly creative people, in that they tend to show creativity across different areas of their life. In other words, we're not creative because we generate a great work of art or piece of music. We generate the great work of art because we think creatively. So why do we care about creativity and creative thinking anyway? Well, as something that has been part of our species forever, creativity is a core drive. However, creativity has ebbed and flowed throughout history. In China during the first millennium and the Industrial Revolution, there were huge leaps in technological evolution, as there are now. Back when sex was safe and skydiving was dangerous, and I was a long-haired teenager plugged into a guitar amp in a garage, so were many of my contemporaries. Our bass player was enjoying a family dinner one night and blurted out that he wanted to become a musician when he left school. The table went quiet. His great aunt asked, "But you can't even play a classical instrument, can you?" He had to admit that he couldn't. His aged uncle Harold, i.e. older than 45, asked, "But why would you rather be a rock star than a large pizza?" Well, everybody thought Harold was a little doolally anyway, but jaws dropped and everybody stared quizzically in the direction of Harold, visibly questioning his sanity. "Well," he said by way of explanation, "at least the pizza can feed a family of 4. Back then, as in the current era, the products of creativity that are valued tend to be technological innovations. Music, art, and literature lag behind. Music particularly lagged behind in terms of our garage band. And that trend is also reflected in the way we think. In the developed world, we're persuaded to think in logical, deductive ways, with little emphasis on the neural pathways connected with creative thinking, which happen also to be the ones associated with emotional intelligence, by the way. This imbalance has negative consequences and is, I believe, in part responsible for the rapid growth of burnout and other anxiety and stress disorders. All of these encourage seizing and freezing, whereby we grasp the first idea that comes to mind and we stop looking for more options. We become like a racehorse with blinders on, only able to view the world through a very small window in front of us. Thinking creatively helps open up that field of vision, allows us to see more options. And this in turn leads to our having a reduced level of stress and anxiety. Let me give you a few ideas about how to start thinking creatively. Creative thinking is all about breaking away from our usual thought patterns. So let's mix things up a bit. Change everyday activities. Try a cup of ginger tea when you start your day, rather than automatically heading for the K-cup. Is there a shirt that you could wear that better suits your personality? How about driving a different route to the work, to the gym, or when taking the kids to school? Let's get them enjoying these changes too. Shop at a different grocery store. Choose different items from the menu when you go to your favorite restaurant, or indeed try a new restaurant. Have a family chat or get together with friends and figure out a new recreation you can all enjoy. Instead of going just to the mall, find a nearby park and plan a picnic. Think of a challenge that you are currently facing and get a large piece of paper or a whiteboard and mind map the challenge. This tool captures your thoughts and ideas and helps visualize them. Share this map with others. The challenge is written in the middle of the page, and then circles radiate out from it, each with a specific theme. If you were thinking about moving house, for instance, you might have radiating lines with themes like school, neighborhood, church, park. If you and your family are planning a vacation or, worse, a major move, how about making a dream board? This will comprise photographs of the place you're planning to dream about, planning to move to. I helped my buddy make this with his family before they moved to Costa Rica. This kind of activity really helps engage at the emotional level and helps make the decision-making process more creative. In other words, it encourages you to actually imagine being in the future. All part of the creative decision-making process will include photographs of things that you want to do abroad, or if you're actually moving, maybe your potential house or sorts of things that you would do for recreation. Finally, when you're making everyday decisions at home or at work, make them with intention. Notice if you have the urge to make knee-jerk decisions and stop yourself. Really think about the options you have. Initially, this is a lot of extra cognitive effort, and being diligent about it can be exhausting at first, but persist. It gets easier and life gets more exciting, more fulfilling, and more enjoyable. Your decision-making will improve because they stem from more options. Thinking creatively has many benefits. By satisfying this innate drive, we use more of our brain and create new neural pathways, which happen to be the ones also associated with emotional intelligence. This brings a great new perspective and worldview, as well as greater happiness and well-being. In the words of John F. Kennedy, conformity is the jailer of freedom and the enemy of growth. Thank you.